article just dropped that put a critical Denver Broncos starter on the chopping block, and not just at random. The guy who makes these predictions uses an advanced algorithm and mathematical formula to make his predictions. Last year, his predictions rang true over 45% of the time. So let me know in the comments, do you think he's accurate? Who on this list do you think the Broncos will definitely not cut? And who is he missing out on? We know that each and every year in the NFL, you are talking at minimum 25% of the roster will turn over. And really bad teams, you're talking 50% of the roster will turn over. So we know at least a quarter of these Denver Broncos will not be with the team when training camp comes. And I read each and every comment. So let me know, who do you think is not here when training camp kicks off? We know Sean Payton is no stranger to making cuts and surprising cuts and cuts for players that we drafted high. I will never forget how shocked I was when we cut Greg Dulcich in the middle of the season. I remember cutting Jonas Griffith, who I was crazy high on coming back from his injury. Obviously cutting Tim Patrick to then go and play with the Lions, cutting Samaje Perine, who then went and played with the Kansas City Chiefs. Sean Payton is not afraid of making cuts when he does not think a player fits a system. But we're diving in now to this article on overthecap.com. Again, he uses a really advanced formula, which is fascinating, but we won't go into it here. And last year, over 38 of his 100 players actually were cut, and then almost 10 of them restructured their contracts to stay with the team. So you're talking players on this list, over half of them will indeed do something with their contract, whether they're cut or renegotiate. So the three players, we're going to go through each of them, why the Broncos might do it, and then what are some signs they might not do it. So the first one at the very top, he has the Denver Broncos will be moving on from inside linebacker Alex Singleton. If you're playing devil's advocate, hey, why would the Broncos never move on from Singleton? I think you even just look today that the Denver Broncos retweeted and mentioned him, that he was named to the Hall of Fame for his school. We've seen the Broncos retweet things about his charity. His sister is a Special Olympian. He's a great dude. You see him on the sideline during rehab, he went to away games even after a crushing injury. And so you just see a leader. You see him being the players rep and being the one who's talking on behalf of the players union for the team. And so maybe they won't move on from him because how much he's loved in this locker room. You also see the other side of that. Why might the Broncos move on from him? I think you're talking an older player coming off a season-ending injury. So you're talking 32 years old. We're already a young, hungry team, and this is putting him up above the average age of a Denver Bronco and coming off a pretty catastrophic leg injury. He says he's going to be ready, but maybe he's not. The other thing is we see the Broncos are having a lot of faith with adding Sanders back to the mix. Drew Sanders, who also had an injury, but came back, and first play of the game he was in against the Chargers, he comes up with a sack. And so might the Broncos have plans for incorporating Drew Sanders more? Other thing could be that Broncos are highly, highly rumored in landing a key free agent who's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate who Sean Payton drafted in New Orleans, and that's Zach Bond. And if all of a sudden in free agency you see us get Zach Bond, that is a clear sign that we will be moving on from Alex Singleton. So let me know. First name on that list, Alex Singleton. I think when you are determining what to do here, age is certainly a factor. And speaking of factor,
Broncos country, we know that watching the Broncos can be stressful, but so can real life, keeping up with work, family, friends, all the responsibilities. One thing that should not get in the way is prepping healthy food, and that is where Factor has been a crucial factor in my success this new year. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen ingredients to your doorstep. It is cheaper than takeout. You don't have to tip a driver, and it is ready in 2 minutes or less. And truly, it is delicious. So many different options to choose from. Each and every day, you're trying something new. We're unboxing here. What do we got? We got white cheddar chicken and broccoli grits. Giddy up, Broncos country. Spicy sweet potato and peanut sauce. Yeah, get you some of that. Again, fresh, never frozen, delivered right to your doorstep in less time. More delicious than takeout. Skip the takeout trap. Order Factor, fuel up, and conquer your week.
So head to factor75.com and enter code 50STDenver to get 50% off of your first box plus free shipping. A huge deal. That's 50STDenver at factor75.com. Next name on this list, John Franklin Meyer, my main man. Probably the biggest deal we did last offseason was stealing him from the New York Jets and getting him in a Denver Broncos uniform. I loved him, loved what he added to this defense, loved the spunk that he brought, the attitude that he brought, and I would absolutely hate to see him go. Even I think the term young and hungry he was one of the people at least who leaned into it. I don't know if he was the first person to say it, but he was the embodiment of young and hungry to me, and I loved having him on the team. But if you were to play devil's advocate, like why might we move on from John Franklin Meyer? He's 29 years old, so you're not north of 30 yet, but reasons you might move on from him is the Denver Broncos edge rushers are wild and they're a platoon. That's what we've been calling them for a long time. And you just take a look at, for the first time since Bradley Chubb, we had a double-digit sack artists with Jonathan Cooper and with Nick Bonito. Nick Bonito obviously being just a game wrecker, and we're going to probably re-sign him. But then you look beyond that. We not only have those two dudes who are like Batman on this defensive line, we go deep. We roll deep, and it's a great, great thing. And Jonah Ellis exceeded all of our expectations for a rookie edge rusher. And you just look at what he did this year to have 5 sacks, to fight through injury. His dad, obviously former Denver Broncos chaplain and a former NFL star himself, came out and said like he played a lot of this season injured, and he did have a shoulder injury in that last game against the Buffalo Bills. And so maybe you don't want all your eggs in his basket. But then on top of not only having Jonah Ellis, we have another rookie, a different path to being a rookie because he was in the UFL, but that's Dondre Tillman. And you just look at him as a rookie as well to have 5 sacks. So the Broncos have 2 artists who have 10 sacks each at least, and then 2 young dudes as rookies who have 5 sacks. It's absolutely wild, and it's a plethora of riches. And so when you talk about why might the Broncos move on from John Franklin Meyer, if it is helping us salary cap wise to add to our defense, you could see a world where that might happen. And again, this is based on this guy's mathematical formula. Last name he has on that list is PJ Locke, one of my absolute favorite Broncos just from a toughness standpoint. And we've told the story a million times on the channel about what he did last year in the Detroit game when he wasn't medically cleared to get on an airplane. So he drove 17 hours to Detroit and played in a football game. But the downside of him is that he was a liability in pass coverage, especially in zone coverage. And so when Riley Moss got injured and we had to switch from our man coverage look to being in a more zone look, you saw him exploited several times throughout that stretch without Riley Moss. And might the Broncos be trying to upgrade that safety position? And if you take a look at some of the mock drafts, there is a mock draft that has the Broncos picking a safety at 20. And if that's the case, that we end up snagging this safety out of Georgia, I would definitely say that the idea that PJ Locke is out is probably very, very accurate. So let me know in the comments other names who are floated about as being on this team now who might this time next year, who didn't make this guy's list. We're talking Cortland Sutton. So I'm very eager to hear what y'all think about who's not going to be on this team, who is currently. Last couple pieces of news that we absolutely have to get into. The Detroit Lions just straight up stole from us, and it makes me furious. So we've been tucking David Shaw away on a remote role where his entire job is to scout for the upcoming NFL draft, and we don't even get to benefit from his knowledge. I'm sure there's ways they had him give him his hard drive or something like that, but David Shaw just got sucked up by the Detroit Lions. And so now you are looking at a world where the Broncos have just lost so much of Sean Payton's coaching tree. And I view it as a great sign that like people respect what Sean Payton is building here, and they want to poach from it. They want a piece of what we are throwing down. And I think that's a fantastic thing. It'll be interesting to see if that's a position that we end up reposting and rehiring for, or that was a special position that didn't exist outside of David Shaw, and it might have been his connection with Condoleezza Rice that created that position. But it's going to be very interesting to see kind of the hater take of all of this. There's a lot of people on Twitter who are coming out and saying that all of these, we are now at 5 coordinators who've landed elsewhere. And my view is that this means Sean Payton is the GOAT and people love him and want to just have even a morsel of what he has taught these people. It's them digging through our trash because like we eat so good that our trash tastes good to these other franchises. But there are people out there who are saying that this is Denver Broncos coaching staff wanting to flee from Sean Payton and wanting to get away. So shout out to Zach Sagers because I disagree with that take. I think it's a sign of respect and a sign that Sean Payton is doing something very right. And even just the fact that we had guys like Jim Leonard come out and say, I'm staying, I think is a great sign. I think we're going to see Darren Rizzi come sign with the Denver Broncos, which will be even further fuel to that fire that everybody wants to come to Sean Payton. He is a talent magnet, and that is a very good thing. So let me know, who do you think is getting cut in Broncos country? We got a ton to believe in. Oh, that was so lined up. Come on.